This is Centre Pass from London Pulse, the brand new podcast produced with anything but footy. London Pulse is London's only Vitality Netball Superleague side, but it's much more than that. And in this podcast series, you'll find out why and how. Coming up in this episode.
We need to seize the moment now.
You have to coach it.
London Pulse need to start being highly successful through every age group.
Yes, we can do this. We can all be here on time and we can work really hard.
She's not just working with the seniors and the 21s.
I do love winning. Definitely getting a couple of Super League championships would be really wonderful.
Welcome to episode 3, a must-listen for all those involved with Pulse. Players from pathway to elite, coaches and staff, and the fans, but also for students of high-performance sport, as we hear from Pulse's very own CEO and head coach Sam Bird, and new performance director Lisa Alexander in conversation. This is Centre Pass from London Pulse. New Pulse performance director Lisa Alexander is simply an Australian coaching legend. In 9 years with the Australian Diamonds, she won the 2015 Netball World Cup, 8 Constellation Cups, 5 Quad Series, and medalled at the 2014 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. In fact, she's been a winning high-performance coach for the past 30 years. And now, as we're about to hear in a chat with Michael, after some courting on social media by Sam, Lisa's here at London Pulse, and they're both dreaming big.
Lisa, I will start with you. First of all, how excited, how pleased are you to be in London and be at the beginning of this brand new adventure?
Well, it is very exciting and it is an adventure. I think for me, particularly after having been an international coach, I guess for many years now, this is a new beginning. It's a new challenge, and I'm really looking forward to it. I've already, been involved quite a lot in the program since I've arrived. I hit the ground running and loved every minute of it.
Why Lisa? Well, she's the best, one of the best in the world. She's obviously massively experienced. She's a winner. She's strong, she's empathetic, all the things that we wanted to bring into the club, and she gave in to me hounding her basically after a while, but we really wanted to bring her here because we're very ambitious as a club. As you know, I feel a great responsibility with the talent we have in London, and we needed a world-class performance director and coach. And so Lisa obviously fits that bill, and we've already worked so well together. I'm really excited about the future for the club.
Sam, when was the first contact then between the two of you? How did you start talking? Where did you start chatting?
Well, we've met sort of through coaching very briefly whilst I was coaching the England Futures. We had the privilege to play against the Aussie Diamonds when they were over on their practice matches before they had test series matches. So we'd met very briefly because obviously Lisa was focused on the Diamonds at the time, so there weren't informal chats, but there was a connection there. But then I essentially heard on the netball grapevine that Lisa may be considering a move to the UK. And once I'd heard that, I was very determined then to try and speak with Lisa about a possibility of coming to London. So it was a good old message via Twitter. And I think probably thought I was a crazy lady contacting her, but we sort of developed some discussions from there, and I think it became obvious very quickly that we were keen to give Lisa a new challenge as well, but also for her to come and make a genuine difference in London and at London Pulse.
Oh, well, I'd been following the London Pulse, so I'd been following Sam and what she does as a coach, because I'm interested in all coaching in lots of different sports actually. So, I reach out to coaches, international coaches a lot via social media. They contact me. And I try and use the platform, particularly Twitter, as an education platform. And I love to retweet things that I think are good learnings for coaches and support their journey to becoming better coaches. And that's not just at the performance level, that's at the community level as well. I'm very passionate about coaching because I think it's one of, our underrated professions in, our society, and it's really important for people's mental health and to provide that, extra support for people in today's world. I guess I've been following Sam and I was looking at London Pulse and knowing how well they've been doing and admiring actually the way they've sort of, I think, grabbed the headlines a little bit in netball in the UK, and particularly the fact that it's London. It's one of the most exciting international cities in the world. I've always wanted, and Malcolm and I, my husband and I, have talked about living overseas for a while, and this presented at this time, and it was just the perfect timing for us. We're sad to leave our little country property in Australia, in Victoria, of course, but we've got great neighbours that are keeping a good eye on it, and we're excited about the challenges that are confronting us now, living in a new city and getting to know the area. And then Sam, just all of a sudden, direct message came about this job, and I had been in talks with another club about coaching. It was an offer that was just too good to be true, to be honest. To be able to work with Sam particularly, someone I admire for how hard she works, and also the fact that she's a CEO of a club plus the head coach. I'm still in wonderment about that, but we're getting there. I'm hopefully supporting her in her role a lot more than, that was the idea of me coming over, was to assist Sam and support her in her role, to be the best coach she can be. And the athletes are just fantastic, and so are the staff and the volunteers around the club. It's got a great energy and vibe, and I'm loving being a part of it.
Sam, I'm interested. Was there a job interview process? And in a way, who dazzled who? Did you have to sell Pulse to Lisa, or did Lisa have to put a PowerPoint together and say, well, this is what I'm going to do if I come to the club? How did that work?
I would say it was more, it evolved in a sort of quieter way than that, really. It was more about, I think, me just setting out the vision and the ambition for the club and the ideology of the club. And when we started talking about the vision and the ideology, it just absolutely connected with the same that Lisa has. So not just looking at the elite end of performance, but looking at how do we make a difference in London, working with that diversity, how do we make a difference to young girls and women's lives, how do we represent London well, how do we empower women to be more confident in their environment, and those sorts of things. So it became fairly obvious very quickly that we share that sort of same passion. So although we're both very competitive and want to win and want our top teams to win, we both actually have a strong sense of working in the community and really providing netball for all and all the good things that sport brings. So, leadership, learning how to win, learning how to lose, all of those things, developing communication. So I think our conversations, we just both became more and more excited to see what we could do together. And it's fair to say it's a risk for Lisa to come over, and I was really grateful that she's taken that risk to come over. And I think that's, again, part of our ideology in the club, that we will take risks, we will do things that take us out of our comfort zone to ultimately be a better club. So it wasn't formal, one presenting to the other. It was more about how are we going to connect, and do we have the same philosophy, and do we have the same drive to really make a difference in London? And it was very obvious that we do.
And Lisa, if you'd had to submit a CV for this job, what would your personal statement have read? What are your qualities? How would you sell yourself?
Well, it's actually my personal trademark that I use to introduce myself to particularly the business side of London Pulse. When I had the first staff meeting and I'd signed the contract, and it was about my personal trademark is making a difference. That's part of who I am. High levels of integrity, and also I think I bring a real high performance mindset to what we do. So, at the very top levels of sport, but I also have an education background. So as a teacher, I'm conscious particularly of the age group that I'm responsible for, which is the 21s, and how busy those young women are. So helping to push and pull and direct, and sometimes put an arm around, sometimes give them a bit of a stern word, whatever it needs and takes for me to get to know the individuals. So I have a philosophy of coaching of knowing the person first and the athlete second. And to me, that's always worked for me as a coach in high performance. But it also works for me when I'm coaching at community level and at school level as well. So, it's again that philosophy of coaching that's very close to my heart, and it links in really well with my personal trademark of making a difference.
And Lisa, the word project is used a lot in sport, isn't it? But this is more than just the Vitality Netball Superleague side. This is a genuine project that you're taking on with Pulse.
Yeah, and I think, the word project conjures up things like business and sport and objectives and KPIs, and Sam will be laughing at that, but it's more than that. It's much more holistic. I'm jumping in as a person, the person that I am, as not just Lisa Alexander, former Diamonds coach, but coming here as a person to really add as much as I can to the club. It's great to be back in a club environment. It's different to being in charge of a national program where, really you don't have that great club feel. You don't have that same consistency of being with people. So, I am a people person, so it's been a fantastic opportunity. And yes, it will be partly a project. That's certainly part of it. But it's also important for me as a person and my husband Malcolm to get out of it this experience of being overseas and enjoying our time here as well in the the twilight stages of our life as well.
Sam, Lisa just used the phrase high performance mindset. What does that actually mean in practice, having a high performance coach?
Well, what it means is, first of all, having that vision and those expectations, but it's the opportunity for our players to be the very best they can be. So looking at all those aspects of performance, not just on the court, but what they do away from London Pulse, all those behaviours that they need to be the very best they can be. We've just had an announcement where we've had 7 players picked for England. It's a club record for 7 out of our 15 Super League players to be representing England. And we have so much talent in the club, and we want those talented athletes to really achieve their potential for themselves, but also for the club. So the thing that Lisa is bringing in is just that edge in terms of what the vision is, what the overall plan is for the club, but then right down to the very basic things about turning up on time, what you're eating, listening to what the coaches say, reflecting on that session, making sure you sleep well, all of those things that are very easy to say, but actually quite hard to deliver and to get athletes to live by those principles. And that's Lisa's will be bringing that magic to turn good players into very good players and high performing players. And we have lots of good players, but none of them have yet reached their potential. And so what Lisa's bringing is that sort of belief as well that they can perform and win at this level. So it's multifaceted, and it's difficult, and it's easy to say, players, you need to eat better, you need to sleep better, you need to do this better, but actually making that happen and making it live within our club and those athletes is a completely different thing. And that's what Lisa's already started to bring, and we're still in the early stages of bringing that and having lots of discussions, but certainly I'm really excited about the vision she has and how she's going to bring those performance behaviours to become normalised within our environment.
Are you ahead of the curve on other franchises in netball in looking at that approach?
I would say yes. I think most people that know me, I'm a bit like a terrier. If I was a dog, I think I'd be a terrier. And it's just this drive to achieve and believe and constantly improve and reflect and be humble in what we're trying to do. And that's why Lisa's here, because that's what I want for our club. And I think we are ahead of the curve. I think other long-standing clubs have perhaps long-standing established protocols, and we'll take the best of some of those protocols. But we're here to be different, be braver, take more risks, and try and set the standard rather than follow it.
And Lisa, we heard Sam there say that some of these things sound, if you like, quite obvious, quite easy. Punctuality, for example, it's something that you think everyone should be able to do. But how does it then improve the performance, and how difficult is it to instill that within a culture?
Well, it's part of the discipline of high performance. One of the key parts to doing the sort of training that we're doing requires commitment, and it requires sacrifice. And you are actually in a team as well. And so being on time shows that you respect your teammates, your coaches, the volunteers and who are there to make things happen. And it also ensures that everybody gets the most out of those sessions. It's really difficult when you've got stragglers coming in, and I can tell you that in London it is tough because you've got all sorts of complexities of getting to a place on time. However, one of the things that I've been able to share with the players is that I did used to do a 2-hour trip every 3 times a week when I was coaching the Melbourne Phoenix back in the early 2000s from country Victoria. And part of doing that means you are away from home for longer, but you need to be very organised, and you need to be at places an hour before you're due. So there's just little things like that, and sharing examples and stories of, yes, you can do it. And I think showing people and showing young people it's possible. So instead of thinking they can't do things, there are barriers, I try to have what's called in psychology possibility thinking. So that, yes, we can do this, we can all be here on time, and we can work really hard, because what we're doing is a consistent approach to training to achieve a goal together that's never been done by London Pulse. I think the talent is there, and it's our job as coaches in the program to nurture that talent, but also to show the way. And one of those very key things is the basics of discipline. Turning up to training on time is a basic discipline. Working really, really hard at training is a basic discipline. And if you don't want to be on the train or the bus, you don't have to be there. The players are making a conscious decision about what they're doing, and we're trying to help them with their decision making so that they understand that, yes, they're individuals, but they're also teammates, and they need to give to the team and the club, and that's a bigger picture for them.
What's been the reaction from the roster so far? Because I presume it can be quite a difficult balancing act, because you are, certainly with the elite team, dealing with grown adults who suddenly you're telling them to do some things that maybe they might push back on a little bit. Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely, and that's the challenge of club coaching as opposed to national teams, where, you can pick who you want at the end of the day, and if somebody's got a poor attitude, it's likely they're not going to make it. In clubland, you have to coach it. You have to figure out ways and be creative about how to manage young people's lives and show them that it's really important to them. And we know it's important to them. Often what they need is just a listening ear and an understanding, and then helping them to, solve problems and showing them they can do it. And when they do it, they find out that it's actually really good for them. They're being successful as an individual. They've changed some behaviour, and they've become part of something that's really exciting, which is a great young team that I can't wait to see out on court, actually. So, but the work has to be done now, and it's hard work, and the success won't come without the hard work.
You're listening to Centre Pass, the podcast from London Pulse. And Sam, I'm interested, listening to you speak there, whether this is netball's Arsene Wenger moment. And what I mean by that, of course, is when Arsene Wenger arrived at Highbury, as it was, to take over as manager of Arsenal, he changed the culture of the club. He took good, experienced players, but took them to a different level. And he did that by changing training methods, by changing their nutrition, their hydration, for example. And I'm wondering whether Lisa's impact at London Pulse could be similar to what Arsene Wenger did when he came to North London.
Well, as an Arsenal fan, I would say yes. I think the difference is that Arsenal's obviously got a long history, and London Pulse, this is our 4th season, only my 3rd year with the club, and we've had a pandemic in the middle. So what we don't have is a history yet. So everything we do is creating our own history. So I think that's why it's so important to bring in somebody of Lisa's calibre and the other coaches we have and the other performance staff we have, because we need to get it right now. You know, I don't want to waste time doing things not to the very best of our ability when we need to seize the moment now. And, I want the club to have a really, really rich history of producing top-class players, world-class players, and winning. And we're already started to do that in our junior age groups, and that's testament to the pathway coaches we have and the programme we already have. But Super League is a different kettle of fish. We have to be better, we have to do everything smarter, and we have to be more resilient. And so that's why we've made this leap now, because London Pulse need to start being highly successful through every age group. And the ambition I have is that we dominate through every age group, and that we keep producing England players and we keep producing strong players even if they don't make it to national level.
And Lisa, there's learnings you mentioned from other coaches in other sports. When you Google Eddie Jones comes up, for example. He's described, I've been reading, as your friend. Is he someone that you can lean on? Is he someone that you share knowledge from?
Yeah, certainly. We've had our times together. I had a lunch with him, I think it was in 2020, at a hotel down near where they train, somewhere in Richmond, Penny Hill. It's a relationship of support, somebody who knows and understands the other person's shoes. They've been in that situation at the very, very top level in World Cup finals. So I think Eddie knows that I support him through and through, and I'm barracking for him, even though I might not be barracking for England. When England plays the Wallabies, I still want Eddie to do well as a coach, and I follow what he does. I think he's a master at press conferences, so I watch what he does there particularly and have learned from that. And I can also give him some advice on different things. So, we talked about some interesting concepts the last time we had lunch together about, the mental side of the game, and also, more about the holistic nature of the coaching environment. And he always takes that on board. He always wants to learn and get better at what he does, and I'm the same. So that support is there. He's quite busy, as you can imagine. I was thinking about, and we may have had a chance to have a visit to Penny Hill this week, but I think the COVID situation has sort of put paid to all of that. But I'm certain we'll get an opportunity soon to catch up and have a chat.
Because I think certainly in this country where football is such a dominant sport, there has been quite a bit of a catch-up, I think, in the United Kingdom in taking those shared experiences, those learnings from other sports. I mean, Gareth Southgate goes out now and sees NFL coaches, and people wonder why he does that. But then you look at the success of the England football team and you go, oh, well, obviously why he's doing that. It seems, though, that you've been doing that for quite a long time.
Yes, I have. It's interesting you talk about Gareth Southgate because it was on a visit together. We actually did a visit to English rugby, and it would have been about 3 years ago, where we both were visiting on the same day. And it was it was only just when Gareth had taken over, the open team. He'd been looking after the 21s, I think. And, he has a similar mindset around learning and growth, and the fact that he needs to put himself out of his comfort zone and get better as a coach. He was, an elite player, but he knows that the coaching business is different. It's about, being able to communicate those messages to your athletes. So, yeah, Eddie was demanding of us that day. He gave to us. We got the opportunity to come into the inner sanctum and observe. But when we're in coaching meetings, he expected both Gareth and I to share our philosophies around coaching. And then at lunchtime, we had a professional development session where we sat with the staff, the entire English rugby staff, whilst we had 10 minutes each explaining our high performance programs that we were involved with at the time. And, that was terrific. Eddie creates those situations where it's not just for him, it's also for his staff, that they're learning, they're growing as people and professionals. I thought that was, quite ahead of the curve himself in terms of that, and that his staff understand his philosophy and how he wants to create that environment for the English rugby team. So it was no coincidence that the English ended up in that World Cup final. I think they might have played their final in the semi-final, unfortunately, against the All Blacks, but that was a superb performance, and all credit to South Africa who took the title. But it's very, very competitive at the top level. There's inches and it's very tough. And I think for him to get to the team to that World Cup final was an enormous achievement because it's not easy.
It's fascinating stuff talking about that high performance space, but I just want to bring it back to London Pulse and the relationship between you, Sam, and Lisa. Who's the boss, Sam?
Such a good question. It depends what activity we're doing, I think, and what we're talking about. So as CEO, obviously my responsibility is to run the club to my very best ability as a business, and it is a business. We do need to raise funds, we need to work with the community, we need to work with our sponsors and partners, we need to increase our fan base. All of those things are sort of business related, and like I've done with Lisa, I've recruited some very good business staff who are helping grow the business and doing a good job. So when we're talking about London Pulse as a business, then that would be me. When we're talking about London Pulse's performance and the success of the club and what the vision and mission will be and how we implement that, then Lisa's the boss. And there might be times where there's some overlap there, and we may both think we're the boss. But I think so far we've developing very quickly a relationship of just being open and honest, and we've already had some very honest conversations. And I think when it comes to performance, that's why Lisa's here. As CEO, I want this club to succeed on the netball court in the performance realm, and that's her role and that's her purpose for being here. But more than that, to also help myself and the other coaches develop in the club. We have 16 academies, we have 5 performance teams, we have the Superleague team. All of those parts of the club have coaching staff, have team managers, and we want to really enable Lisa to share her knowledge and set up best practice for the whole club. And that's a huge role for Lisa. So she's not just working with the seniors and the 21s. This is about changing the performance culture of the whole club. So when you come into this club as a 13 or 14-year-old, you are required to follow the same behaviours and performance all the way through the club, and that's what's going to be so valuable.
And Lisa, in leadership, obviously we are at the early stages of this partnership, but a little bit of agitation's not too bad. A little bit of conflict can sometimes be healthy. Is that fair? Do you agree?
Yes, there's always turmoil and commotion in anything that's worth anything, because, you know, you need to be, we're both very passionate about netball and coaching, and I understand very clearly my role is to support Sam in her role as CEO. Definitely, I get that, and I'm trying to do that as well as I can, because that's why she's got me in here, to look after the performance side. But also as the head coach, I think it's important for me to support Sam. I've said to her that at the end of the day, she is the determinant and the decision maker for the Super League team, because as head coach you have to make those decisions. But what I'm trying to do is to give her as much support and information to make the right decisions at the end of the day. But again, across the whole program, I see the same thing. It's me influencing and supporting all of our coaches in their journey of making London Pulse one of the most exciting clubs to be a part of, and that, you know, players want to be a part of London Pulse because it takes performance seriously, and it also is an embracing, inclusive club as well. So it's not just about, you know, you have to have the best fitness test results, or, you know, you have to be the best in the gym. You also have to be a really good person. So the character side of things is so important, and hopefully I will drive both of those areas in the leadership of being the performance director.
You both tweeted #DreamBig recently. Lisa, when you get back on that plane and head home at some point in the future, at the end of the London Pulse project, what will you consider to have been a successful time with the club?
I think definitely getting a couple of Super League championships would be really wonderful. I do love winning, there's no doubt about that. I'm very self-centered and obsessed with that. And I know what it feels like, and I know the sort of work that needs to be put in to do that. It's not always easy, but I think it can be done. But certainly to see that improvement in the Super League team, to see them going up the ladder, you know, being great role models for the rest of the club, and also for English netball in general, and being the club of choice that people want to come to. I think those two things will be a tick for me.
Sam Bird, CEO and head coach of London Pulse, and Lisa Alexander, the performance director. Thank you both so much for speaking to Centre Pass, the podcast from London Pulse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you can just hear the excitement in their voices, not just for the new Super League season, but for all the players and potential across the levels at London Pulse. That's it though for another edition. If you're listening for the first time, thank you. Follow for much more, and don't forget to download episodes 1 and 2, where you can hear more from Sam and other Pulse partners and players. This is the Centre Pass podcast from London Pulse.